Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm JC here to do May's monthly meta. Got a lot of events to cover this month. I think there's 8 Springfests total. Today I'm joined by Jack, our editor and creator of this channel. Jack, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, JC. It's going to be great talking about monthly meta.
Yeah, Jack is a very avid standard player and probably has the most accomplishments on the team throughout the events we've been to. So I'm very excited to hear his feedback, and y'all get to hear his voice most on the channel, so I'm sure you're aware of his commentary. But we're just going to jump right into it. We're not going to be going over individual lists this month because A, there's a ton of events, and B, we do have a predictions segment this month since we have set 10 coming out in the month of June. So for starters, we have BSF Rosemont. Congratulations to Please Win, who brought Eva, Chrono, and Welstra. Second place team brought Mahar, Overlord, and Eva. Third place team brought Jet, Youth, and Eva. And the fourth place team brought Jet, Youth, and Minerva. So we're really starting to see people figure out what the best lineups are. The one standout here is the Mahar Nirvana, which would make sense to bring here and there because of the set 9 Stragaglio support.
Yeah, Stragaglio really helps the deck's consistency. If you're missing arcs, you can search out arcs, or if you're on your Mahar and you're missing your Esperidea, you can just search it out and have a really good turn 4 or turn 3 if you use Amelia to high roll.
Yeah, and congrats to that second place team for winning without a Jet. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Alright, so we have the results from BSF Spain. The first place team, congratulations to Brexit Among Us, who brought Chronojet, Welstra, my bad, and Eva. Second place team brought Jet, Youthberg, and Prison. Third place team brought a Jet, Eva, and Lutetia. And a fourth place team brought Flagberg, Jet, and Lutetia. So the standout one to me is the Prison list, because Prison has not been played for a long time, and it has major weaknesses in this meta, especially Eva and Jet.
Yeah, I think these grade 4 decks can still do well, but I think the general weakness they share is they're still having to wait till turn 4 to get their big plays going, and they don't plus that much compared to decks now in Standard.
Yeah, especially Prison.
Yeah. Now we have BSF Vietnam. Congratulations to SBTC Vodich with Kyrie, Overlord, Minerva. Second place team, Barrow, Jet, and Eva. Third place team, Welstra, Vehemence, and Jet. And the fourth place team, Youth, Overlord, and Jet. The first place team with Kyrie, it goes back to what we've been saying, like the past 2 events, like grade 4 decks are still good. I think Kyrie's probably better than the past 2 because of the rush that it can obtain with Melty. But again, you're still waiting for your power plays to come on turn 4. And you also have the weakness of your opponent using a free PG against you because of Elementaria.
That is true. And Kyrie, unlike Prison and Nirvana, has a really weak turn 3 because the grade 3 just doesn't do anything besides bounce 2 rear guards. So
True.
I'm kind of surprised to see Kyrie on first place. The other one is the Vehemence Bruce list. We're not looking at lists, so
Yeah.
Unfortunately we won't get to see the spice. But the deck can do really well because if you're going first, you have access to Mabel, which can give your Vanguard triple drive, basically having a grade 4 on turn 3.
Yeah, I think this deck is actually very cool, very explosive, and Megan is very scary in this deck. It's the festival card from last year. She just becomes a 30k beater on turn 3, which is nothing to scoff at.
Definitely. Also, I'm glad that we don't have to list out the name for the second place team.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Mayo.
All right, now we have BSF Puerto Rico. The first place team, congratulations to Undisputed Muebel with a Shoujo Doji, Overlord, and Eva. Second place team brought a Welstra, Jet, and Minerva. The third place team brought Overlord, Avantgarda, and Roa. The fourth place team brought Jet, Eva, and Youthberg. It's called Meta Sheep, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, there's a few standouts here. Shoujo was very surprising, turned a lot of heads. The best part about this deck is that it has an amazing early game. Like, it can just open up going first 3 18k columns and just keeps bashing face, which is really good in Standard. Really, really good.
Rushing is great.
And Avant-Garde, we had like previous predictions that it would do well in the months. It is a good deck. It's not as good though as it will be coming up in set 10.
Yeah, and Roa is really good in the Jet meta because Jet's really good at rushing, but Roa is even better at rushing since it can commit rearguards to board without having to use any cards from their hand, which is really great.
Yeah, really cool event overall. For the Myanmar tops, we don't have infographics on Twitter, so we're just going to look at Vanguard Paradox. You can look at this colorful pie chart.
Beautiful.
But the other thing about this event is it was a singles event, because I don't think that that region has a lot of turnout. I think it's a very new tournament location for Vanguard. Yeah. So you can look here at the top 8, just going down, going from 8th to 1st. 8th place we had Clarissa, then Dragonic Overlord, Bastion, Graham Grace, Jet, and congratulations to the first place player, Maelstrom.
I'm so proud.
Yeah. So, not a lot to talk about. Like, you can see the consistency is in Jet, and everything else, it seemed like it was more like a big locals.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, now we have the BSF event for Indonesia with Alpha 01. Congratulations to them. With Youthberg, Eva, and Jet. The second place team brought Lutetia, Eva, and Jet. Third place team was Eva, Jet, and Welstra. And the fourth place team was Eva, Overlord, and Lutetia. This is way more standard than the other ones.
Yeah, I think everything here makes sense. And I know for a fact that Indonesia is a very, very try-hard location for Vanguard. So all these people were trying to win.
The only one of was Youthberg, which has gotten weaker in this meta. It's not nearly as strong as it was, but I think if you have a Youthberg deck and you don't have access to Eva or Jet, I think it's a really good pick for tournaments.
Next is BSF Italy. Congratulations to the first place team. Unfortunately, there are no names listed, so congrats. Minerva, Jet, and Eva. Second place team was Eva, Lukier, and Overlord. Third place team was Welstra, Eva, and Jet. Fourth place team was Eva, Archite, and Lutetia. The standout is Lukier. Jack and I were talking about Lukier the other day and how that it's not a bad deck in Standard. The problem is that it doesn't have like the most consistent multi-attack, and it does have like, you know, unfortunate conditions in having to wait till your opponent's at grade 3.
Yeah, to really get all of its benefits. On top of that, the deck doesn't plus as much as you would think. It's mostly just like ride up, get big numbers, try to kill, and if you don't kill, then you're at the mercy of your opponent.
Right, but it is getting some pretty interesting support later in the year.
Yes.
Which is very exciting.
And the last one we have is BSF Newark with the first place team, Generations Tap the Sign. Congratulations to them, which is Jet, PBO, and Eva. Then we have the second place team, third place team, and fourth place team, which all brought the exact same lineup: Eva, Jet, and Overlord. But obviously, like different positions, different players. Mm-hmm. But that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, this isn't the first event we've seen in Springfest where we've seen multiple teams just with this lineup. It is. In my opinion, I think this is the strongest lineup, with like the Overlord being the replacement slot usually. But Jack plays a lot of PBO, and PBO has become more viable ever since that new promo came out.
The new promo definitely helps, because before, if you were facing Jet, they could just bottom deck your Blaster Darks, and then the entire deck would turn off. But now with the new promo, not only does it give Blaster Dark drive checks, but it also retires Blaster Dark. So you have a really good early game, because with Amelia and some of the other techs you can have from Counter Sanctuary, it has a really great rush turn, and then you can just have more consistent turn 3s with lots of drive checks and lots of pressure. So yeah, I'm not surprised that PBO topped like a event.
That's all the Springfest events for the month. There were some other non-official Bushiroad events on Vanguard Paradox, so if you want to check them out, or any of the individual lists that we looked at, I would check out that site. Shout out to Fuzzy Paradox.
What a guy.
Now we're going to be looking at deck log, so that way we can talk about the upcoming set that comes out June 9th, Dragon Masquerade, right?
Yes.
Set 10. This is probably the most hyped set. This isn't hyperbole.
Yeah,
This is probably the most hype overdressed set since this format released.
Either that or like set 4.
Yeah, set 4. At least for me, like this set has a lot of exciting things. That's why we wanted to get to this prediction segment as soon as possible. Please keep in mind that these predictions are subjective. These are our opinions of what the competitive Vanguard scene will look like for the near future. So the first thing I like to talk about are the generic things that affect all the nations, and this is probably the most impactful generic card to have come out for nations, in my opinion, in recent time, and that is the new cycle cards for set 10, which are all grade 2s and all have the ability, when it's discarded from your hand during the ride phase, you can Soul Blast 1, bot deck this card, and draw a card.
Yeah, they're all amazing. Like, they help so much for the early game, especially against stride deck sets, which automatically get an extra draw, or decks that just like plus super hard in the early game, or rush super hard. They're just amazing, and all of them have like really nice utility effects depending on what deck you're playing.
That are locked behind Persona
Yes,
Ride.
I forgot to mention that. They are locked on Persona Ride turns, which means that if you're playing a grade 4 deck or a stride deck set, you cannot use these decks.
Right.
Or these cards.
Right. And not just to match tempo with faster decks, but also it's a great engine for decks that just don't plus.
Exactly.
Or plus in weaker ways than other decks. Check all these out. These are all very cool cards. I don't think every deck can play them because of certain ride line skills or because of just space, but we are definitely better off having this tool in the format. The next generic thing we're going to talk about, and I say generic because it's used in every nation, and I think at some point every nation, it will be able to be used in every nation, is the Mask of Hydreigon. This is the order card that is used to both search mask units and superior Persona Ride mask units. Now keep in mind that superior Persona Ride only happens if your opponent's on grade 3, but you can superior ride a mask unit even if your opponent isn't on grade 3, which is relevant for some of these new cards coming out.
Exactly. Like, for instance, sometimes Drajeweled or Zorga would want to ride to grade 3 while the opponent's on grade 2 without the Persona Ride, just because they automatically have like really nice effects that you can just use straight away.
Right. But before getting to that, like, this is just going to be a very important piece if you have any sort of interest in mask builds or future mask builds. So I would highly recommend picking up this card as soon as possible, and it will be expensive, but like it will be worth it down the line, especially since some of these mask decks are probably going to be very relevant looking ahead.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to be talking about getting to more archetypal stuff, starting with one of the new mask units, and that is Teasing Spiritualist Zorga Mask. So Jack, you want to take the lead on this one?
I will. Zorga Masks, in my opinion, is the strongest of the mask builds we have so far because of its ability to search the mask really easily, not only with the new Dragon Tree Wretches that can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1 to search the mask, but also place a Dragon Tree marker, but it has access to Shadow Cloak, which allows you to dump the mask from the deck immediately. On top of that, Zorga Masks has 2 really amazing skills, which allows you to Alchemagic for free with any order from your drop. So you can even utilize an order of the same name, and that first effect is basically just Persona Ride, as long as you Alchemagic, which the deck is always going to be able to do. That's why we were talking about how there are some times where you would actually want to ride with the mask's effect, even if your opponent's not on grade 3, because you basically already have Persona Ride. On top of that, Zorga got amazing support card in the form of the Keel Severing, which is its way of multi-tacking now, as long as you have a Dragon Tree marker on your rearguard circle, which is going to be very easy to do for this deck. It has a lot of recursion, a lot of plussing, just huge amounts of power, and on top of like the mask also allowing you to Persona Ride, this deck can just immediately go off on turn 3 and leave your opponent in a very bad spot.
The second card we're going to be talking about is the new Drajeweled Mask. So piggybacking on what Jack was saying, this is the other archetype that's really able to benefit over using Mask earlier rather than waiting for Persona Ride, because with the original Drajeweled, you're able to soul charge with his act skill, then go into this, and then you're able to get your crit on turn 3 rather than waiting for your opponent to be on grade 3. So this deck has a very, very explosive turn. I don't think it's as consistent as Zorga, which is why we both think that Zorga is stronger, but this might have an actually have a higher ceiling because of you having to deal with very large columns with your Vanguard being at 1 power. This nation also got a Mask Searcher, which will come up later in the form of, Skull Kemda and the eel thing.
Yes. The only unfortunate thing about Drajeweled that might make him see less play than he does in Japan is that we don't have access to the promo card Impuza, which is a free form of multi-attack. However, I don't think that will entirely make it so the deck won't see play. I think the deck will still see a lot of play.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to probably the most impactful new ride line / boss unit in this set. We're going to talk about Gandiva. Gandiva is strong for several reasons. The main all-encompassing reason is that it has all of the support that it needs built within the set. Like, other than some PGs and the Overtrigger, you pretty much have all that you need to have a very strong competitive deck right out of the gates, which is really important to a lot of people. This deck is able to multi-attack, it has built-in crit, it has mass retire, it pluses, and I'm sure you've seen several videos already about why this deck is good. It also, because of the Gandiva skill, basically has what we call a pseudo crest, where it makes large columns very early on and very easily, just like Chronojet's crest does. Like, your ultimate goal in this deck is to get to 5 in bind as soon as possible. That way you can already be swinging for magic numbers and that your Vanguard's already swinging with a crit. And because of that pseudo crest skill, all of your units are able to have good numbers. So even in the end game, you can call down triggers, and those triggers could easily be 30k attackers.
Oh yeah, it's kind of insane. Gandiva, like, when I covered it in the first thoughts video, I thought it was a good deck, but I didn't think it was going to be like the top dog and replace some of the meta decks we have now, because normally we had to wait like a second support wave for a deck to reach its stride. But man, Gandiva just took that and went running.
Well, and be ready for this, because you will see this in your locals, in competitive leagues. You'll see this deck everywhere because of how accessible it is.
Yes. Moving on to Keter Sanctuary. As much as I would like to talk about the new ride line Soul Rairon, unfortunately it's not making as much of an impact in the meta, but a Keter deck is making an impact, and that is Hexorb. So Hexorb got an amazing upgrade in the form of Aquamarine, which turns all of your trigger units into a stand trigger for essentially Soul Blast 1. And it's not once per turn either. So it makes Hexorb's already explosive ride up even stronger by just having restands already by turn 3. On top of that, the Persona Ride turn has an even higher ceiling because it not only gives her a drive for free, but increases all trigger effects by plus 10k. So a critical trigger now gives 20,000 power, and front triggers give 20,000 power to the front row. So just from this one upgrade, we're already seeing Hexorb Sorceress do some damage on the Japanese side. And I think that's going to translate perfectly to the English side. So look out for Hexorbs at locals or at competitive events, because it can just steamroll the opponent.
Yeah, I hate playing against this deck. And so I'm personally not looking forward to seeing it come back, but good for the Hexorb players, Yeah. And they also their cycle card is a scry for this deck, which is really, really good.
Yes, the Spiral Cutie Angel, really good for pretty much any Keter deck, but especially Hexorb.
Yep. And we wouldn't be predictions without some cope, and Jack is I think he's the cope lord.
I am. I love cope. It's some of my favorite types of decks. So, like JC last time, or two metas ago. I thought it was the 1 meta ago, but 2 monthly metas ago, the very first one, he said that Griffer Gilla might have a top in the format. Unfortunately, it did not. It did in a different format, which was premium, but we won't talk about that. But I personally think that Griffergilla has gotten a lot stronger in set 10, specifically on the Dark States and Stoicheia side, because of the 2 new Dragon Tree Wretches that it received. Not only do they create more markers, which helps consistency and getting your crit immediately by turn 3, but it also searches the mask. And even though you won't play mask units in Griffergilla, you can use that first effect to check top 5 for a Dragon Tree card and put it into your hand. This can search for Persona Rides and even more of your Dragon Tree Wretches to spread even more markers. On top of that, I personally play Dragon Tree Stoicheia, so I'm excited for the possibility to use the new Dragon Tree Wretch to search out the mask, so I can have it for discard fodder for Ye Wandering Souls, which is the main order card you want to use in that build. So I think for like a locals deck, it's really, really good, and maybe with this new support, we can see a Griffergilla actually get carried by Jet or Eva, but not get carried as hard.
Right. So, that is all for today's monthly meta. We are, after BSF Canada, the US will be done with its North American events, so Europe will be finishing that off for us, as will AO. If you have any events coming up, or if you're just looking to learn about the future of set 10, I would go ahead and just read every card in the set. I think it's a good idea. And check out what archetypes are getting their specific support and see what's going to be making them stronger. It's a really good way to get better at Vanguard. It's just knowing the card pool. But thank y'all for listening. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We would really appreciate it. We love seeing y'all's comments. Jack, thank you for joining, and thank you for your commentary.
Of course, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Yep. We'll see y'all next month in the set 10 meta. Bye.
Yep. Bye.